One is our main entrance that many of you came through, and the other is across from our reception desk and to the left. That's also where our restrooms are located at. Before we get started, please silence your cell phones if you have not done so already. That way you'll be fully present with the program. And a little bit about the center. The Health Foundation John Scott Center opened in the fall of 2022 and is owned and operated by the Louisiana Endowment for the Humanities. This is a 50-year-old statewide organization with a mission to partner with communities, institutions, and individuals to explore Louisiana's past, reflect on the present, and imagine our future. Here at the John Scott Center, we share ideas of heritage and symbolism, interpreted through the lens of artist, educator, and humanist John T. Scott's life. Art and legacy while promoting opportunities that nurture connections, enhance human potential, and drive social change. One way that we do this here at the center is through programming. So I would like to say thank you for joining us for tonight's program, 21st Century Indigenous Review, 20 Years of Gulf Coast Tribal Successes. This program will feature a presentation by the co-founder of the Houma Language Project, Wabancha and Wabancha Public Access, Hali Dardar of the United Houma Nation. Following, there will be a panel discussion with 3 Indigenous activists. John DePriest of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. He's an instructor in the English for Academic and Professional Purposes program through the Center for Global Education at Tulane University. Scierra LeGarde of the Bayou, Lacombe Band of Choctaw. She is a member of Oklahoma Ikishu Palo, People of the Sacred Medicine Trail, which is a network of femme and non-binary Indigenous gardeners working urgently to develop the continuation of sacred, long-standing cultural practices connected to food, medicine, and land. And we have Monique Verdin of the United Houma Nation. She is the director of the Land Memory Bank and Seed Exchange and is supporting the people of the Sacred Medicine Trail as the Women's Earth and Climate Action Network, Climate Actions Network's Gulf South and Medicine Sovereignty Program Manager, and is also a member of the Nihi Bobancha Bill team. So let's welcome Hali, John, Scierra, and Monique.
Thanks so much for everyone for joining us today. I'm going to try to, can everyone hear me? Is this loud enough? I can go louder. This is good. All right, go ahead. Oop.
Is that a mic?
We're trying to record it, but do you need a mic? Is this okay? I can try to project if that's okay. Okay. Let's see if we can get this to work. Oh, there we go. Okay. So the goal of this talk, I don't know if you guys have been out about in New Orleans yet, but you may have seen a large mound show up on the Greenway. There's also a great piece in Anti-Gravity kind of talking a little bit and interviewing about the mound. But this is a beautiful monument, a visible part of the indigenous work that has been happening within the Gulf Coast region for over 20 years. These projects show years of community organizing become visible. We can fully celebrate the success of these projects by exploring the rich history and context of contemporary indigenous identity and vibrant cultural participation in the Gulf South. And the way I want to do that today is highlight indigenous cultural heritage connectors, the people who are working to connect the indigenous network together, and to better appreciate the breadth of work that goes into the indigenous community here. So, halito, my name is Hali Dardar. I'm a member of the United Houma Nation. I'm the former project manager at the Smithsonian Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage, looking at indigenous and minoritized language work. And right now I've been working on Houma Language Project for the past decade and Wabancha Public Access for about 5 years now. It's going fast. Before we go any further, I want to talk a little bit and have a moment of grace for what it means to talk about success in this very moment, today, November 7th, Thursday. You know, I think it's really important for us to greet non-human relatives, and I feel like there's a grief here, and we need to accept that, and we need to acknowledge it in this space also as we talk about this. When I think back of 2016 and where I was actually in this building. I was working as the primetime assistant for Louisiana Endowment for Humanities. I was working in person back in the day when everyone had to go somewhere in person for their work. And I remember just driving in my car, parking, getting my overly expensive latte, and walking to work and feeling very isolated. And I think about this moment now, and I think about just the work that's been happening in this small amount of time, and what's happened in the last 3 days, and how I don't feel as isolated. And I think as we're thinking about that, it's so strong for me to understand that I'm not alone here, that we have been building things for the last, I can't do math, what is that, 9 years? We have been building things to make sure that there is success in this moment. And as I talk here today, and as we talk about our network and the way that we have connected over the past 2 decades, I want you to think in your mind about how have you connected, and what are the relationships and the network that makes you strong in this moment. I want to talk about the weavers. I want to talk about this idea of nets and baskets and these ports where we're taking these strands of knowledge and we're tying them together in some way. There are people who do that intentionally and often, and I'm going to call those people weavers. Those are the people who are seeing the strands of different things that are coming together and pulling this material into becoming a sustainable net, a sustainable basket, something that can hold something else. I want us to think about, in this moment, who are the weavers? I also want to think about if we are weavers or if we're not, if we can identify the weavers, what makes them successful? We understand their value and their necessity, and how can we uplift them in these moments? So just to give you a little bit of background of where I'm looking for weavers, there are 4 federally recognized tribes within Louisiana, and there are 11 state-recognized tribes within Louisiana. I think Jeffrey back there can give us an exact count, but there's also non-recognized state tribes, so tribes within this area who are communities who are not recognized by the Louisiana state government. I also want to acknowledge their existence in this moment too. I think this is important. This is kind of the perfect thing to talk about networking, because Indigenous networks are primarily relational, and we can best perceive their success by looking at the strength and the quality of the relationships. I just moved back from DC. I was in DC until 2023 September, and I gotta say, these 2 cities are very different from each other. New Orleans is an extremely relational place. In order to get anything done, you have to know people, you have to interact, you need to network. DC is a very, what I'm calling, procedural place. You gotta have the right form, you gotta be in the right spot, you gotta be in the right location with the right form at the right time, or else it doesn't matter who you are. And I think that that's 2 different ways of thinking about how to do things. And I'm not saying that one is more valid than the other. I just want to highlight the ways that these processes exist. I'm defining process as a formalized steps of creation, which can ensure replicable results. The idea is that anyone can fill out the same form and have the same thing happen to them. A lot of times people think about Indigenous communities in that very procedural way. We think about tribes as, oh, it's the process. They have gone through the process of recognition. That means they have formed into a group. A lot of times that kind of goes into us, thinking like, oh, it's like other groups, like basketball teams or legal cases that have been formed. And when we start to perceive Indigenous communities and relationships as processes, it gets confusing when it's actually happening as a relationship. So for example, just to harp on that one more time, You know, the goal of a basketball team is they all have the same goal in mind. I see a few people here who have been to tribal council meetings. I don't know if you get the sense, please talk to one of these people after, but nobody has the same goal in mind. And that's a very different way to talk about thinking and doing and being. Another way to talk about this is a really great case, McGirt 2022, I think. Definitely look it up, really great moment. But another way that we think about Indigenous communities is that they are legal suits against the United States that are held by the Bureau of Indian Affairs for land, for identity, for some sort of reparations for the things that have been taken. If we think about Indigenous people just through that lens, we're missing a whole large swath of their identity and personhood. Oop, I'm going backwards. Where's going backwards? We're gonna go forwards. We're gonna make it go forward, guys. We're gonna do it. But what is it to think about things as relationships? Relationships are connections. They're changed, relationships are changed by the actions that an individual take. And the individual actions can produce a multiple of visible or invisible or tangible or intangible effects. You can shake someone's hand and you could do the exact same handshake to someone else and it could be an incredibly different context, or it can be an incredibly different moment or gesture. Relationships are not procedural. It doesn't have that same, it's much more nuanced in the way that things work and operate. Relationships look like a group chat, which is very different than how, if you perceive Indigenous people like a basketball team. If there's any, raise your hand if you've been victimed by a group chat or have been in a group chat. I would highly recommend, if you haven't gotten there, if you're having problems, Signal's a great one, because you can mute people. It's great. Or you can mute whole chats. You know, you need those things. This is the cast of modern life, but this idea that there's just an immense amount of chaos in relationships that aren't really captured when you're looking at things in a procedural way. If you want to read more, please check out The Great Power of Small Nations by Elizabeth Ellis. This is an incredible book that was written, I think it was published in 2022, but it really talks about the complexities of Indigenous relationships and small nations and how they interacted with each other in the Gulf South. Highly recommend this read. And this is another visual to just think about, how do we envision relations as a net? This is an artist, I can't remember their name, it's been a long week. Oh wait, it's Harmonic Motion by Toshido Hiroshi at Mac Adams. But I really like what this artist says about their work. And they say that most children need to play in more nets, because at the moment when you're playing in a net, someone's action from across the net impacts the way that you feel and move. Even if you don't have to know this person who's moving or jumping, but it's impacting your experience within life. And so when we're thinking about the net of Indigenous relations, we need to think of it as things that are vibrating across an entire group. And we need to think about living in a way that we understand that our vibrations or our movements are making an impact on other people. This is a group of people. This is the Houma Language Project at our Tasso Time gathering back in 2022. Just a lot of chaos and fun and joy. I feel like we need that today. This is a relationship. And I think that if we want to get one thing out of this talk, it's that Indigenous people are still here. Indigenous networks are still here and operating, and they have not discontinued over time. I want to highlight some of the knots in these strands. There's the way of saying that, you don't really remember anything until you've heard it 3 times. So I'm hoping to take most of my time today and just let you meet some people. I want to show their names. I want to say their names in this room and allow you to see their face, with the idea that maybe next time you see them, it won't be the first time. It might be the second time or the third time. And this understanding that you can approach the net a little bit easier. This is a very long list, and I know that I've missed 3 people, and I know that I've missed more, but I just want to call out the names that I know I've missed. Andrew Jolivet, Pete Billiot, and Jake Verdin. So before that, I'm just going to go through this slideshow really quickly. And as you're looking at these people, think about yourself and think about where is your network and who are the people that support you. Dr. Tammy Greer, Bert and Linda Langley, Donna Parit and John Barbary, Kimberly Walden, Sherelle Parfait Dardar, Albert Nakan, Jeffrey Derensberg, Rain Prudhomme, Leela Blackbird, Greyhawk Perkins, Janie Luster and Corrine Polk, Cougar Goodbear, Becky Thomas Meseret, Sherry Foytlin, Robert Caldwell, Eli Langley, Elizabeth Parit, Jean-Luc Parit, Monique Verdin, Colleen Billiot, Jenna May and Ozone 504, Scierra LeGarde, John DePriest, Brittany Jimenez Verdin, Malia Papillon, Bailey Champagne, Jessica Parfait, Ida Aronson, Angela Como, Rachel Billiot Brule, Travis Dardar, Virginia Richard, Mariah Fitch Hernandez, there are more people out there, and if you want to hear a little bit more about some of these people that I named out today, you can go to the Bulbancha Public Access Meet the Stream. There's a QR code at the bottom. Some of these people have profiles on Bulbancha Public Access. It'll bring you to media and interviews or some of their artwork or thoughts or any kind of work that they might have. I see some people pulling out their phones, so I'm going to wait as people take pictures. Let me know when y'all got it, I can move on. All right, we're doing it. We're going? Doing it, okay. We are crafting futures, and we are crafting futures here. The name of this talk is Indigenous Success Over the Last 20 Years. And I had to take a moment and go back and think about like, what's been happening? What's up? So I condensed it down to the top things that have happened just so we can figure out what was happening back in 2004. So in 2004, Facebook launched. Wow, it's 20 years ago. 2005, Katrina happened. 2007, we hit the financial crisis. 2008, Obama was elected. 2010, we experienced the BP oil spill. 2011, the world experienced the Arab Spring. 2015, same-sex marriage became legal in the United States. 2016, Trump entered his first term. 2016, Dakota Access Pipeline protests began. 2020, COVID. And 2024 is today. I feel like I need some Tiger Balm just reading that list, right? This is what's happened here. These are some of the successes that have happened over the last 20 years. In 2005, Tammy Greer began her medicine wheel garden. In 2007, Linda and Burke Landy receive an NSF grant for Coasati language documentation. In 2009, Chitamacha receive a grant to begin Rosetta Stone work. In 2010, the Tunica Language Project begins. In 2012, My Louisiana Love documentary premieres. In 2018, Jeffrey Derensberg begins speaking on the term Bulbancha. In 2019, Bailey Champon petitions Louisiana to change the name of Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day. In 2021, Bok Choa Gardens has been established. In 2023, L'École Pointe-aux-Champs begins construction. And in 2024, Nani Bolbancha begins construction. That's a lot. We can do things, guys. I don't know it. Okay. How much time do we have? Are we good? Okay, good. Okay. I want to break these things out into a few more levels of success for us to talk about. Like I said, in 2007, Let Us Hear Coasati, which was one of the first NSF grants granted to the state of Louisiana, happened in linguistics for the Coasati language. Isn't that great? In 2007, the Chitimacha Language Department also wins the Rosetta Stone competition, a competition put out by the software company to select a language that they would have completely free and created within that language. So Chitimacha Rosetta Stone exists. In 2010, the Tunica Biloxi Language and Cultural Revitalization Project begins with the support of Tulane University. I think in 2012, I haven't gotten confirmed a correct exact date, but the Gina Band of Choctaw Indians begin their Chata Anumpa courses online. In 2013, we begin the Houma Language Project. In 2021, L'École Pointe-aux-Champs begins its petition to have its school happen. In 2021, the Houma Language Project receives a grant to begin the Youth Language and Internship Program. In 2021, ELI Language petitions Harvard to accept Coasati as a language proficiency within the institution, and it is accepted. In 2024, Tulane has enough students to begin offering Choctaw as a language opportunity. Wow, right? Doing it. That's just on language. There's some other really great things that have happened on memory. In 2012, Native Waters, a Chitimacha recollection premieres on LPB. Great documentary, you should go check it out. Another great documentary, 2012, My Louisiana Love by Monique Verdin premieres. In 2018, Bolbancha is Still a Place zine is published to talk about the indigenous presence in New Orleans. In 2019, a group of Houma get together to begin reconstructing the Tasso Time Festival. In 2020, Bolbancha Public Access launches Unrecognized Stories to start documenting and giving public information about indigenous communities in this area. In 2021, following Hurricane Ida, Bolbancha Liberation Radio begins as a stream broadcast to support and platform indigenous voices in the area. In 2022, Tammy Greer receives a Library of Congress grant for We Are Still Here, a project to publicly document Houma oral histories. And in 2023, Ekbe, a short film on Houma language reconstruction, is premiered at Sundance by Maria Fitch Hernandez. Some great stuff, guys. We gotta just sit slow. Again with place. In 2005, the University of Southern Mississippi with Tammy Greer begins the Medicine Wheel Garden. In 2017, Monique begins the Land Memory Bank project. In 2018, Sherry Foytlin begins the Bayou Bridge pipeline protests. In 2019, Oklahina Ish Holo begins as a gardening collective. In 2020, the Bolbancha Collective joins Oklahina. In 2021, fishermen interested in saving our heritage, which is the acronym FISH, developed, is it great? Love it. Developed by Travis Dardar begins to support indigenous shrimpers. And in 2023, Nani Bolbancha breaks ground in New Orleans. This is another place, I see this, we're at the beginning of Indigenous History Month. And And so I want to give you this bibliography. If you're working at a school system or if there's some other place, this is just kind of a short scan of some publications that have happened within the last decade from Indigenous people or about Indigenous people in the Gulf South. I have to say, this is very, very subjective and very skewed towards my research and my work, which is Houma. There's other things out there in other communities, but I just want to say that it's very Houma heavy. This whole thing's very Houma heavy because I'm here. I'm heavy. Okay. And so if we think about, and we've seen these weavers and we've seen what they've accomplished, what makes their work possible, or what makes us strong? What makes us strong as an Indigenous network, and what makes us strong right here in this moment? The things that we've found have built success is having people do research, having people who are Indigenous actively take part in looking and drafting history of their work. Grace and communication has been another one. We are not a basketball team. We all have very different work. And I think as we approach dialogue and we approach intertribal or interproject work, grace and communication is vital. We are not enemies together. We are working together slightly differently in a way that frustrates us to no end. It's a different place. When we design things for mutual benefit, it seems to work well. We're not asking people to go in a different direction than where their heart or their passion is, but we're finding ways and designing ways to uplift both multiple passions at the same time when we're doing work. We imagine, we dream. We're trying to make sure that we're bringing not just the past forward, but ourselves and the future forward. We are divesting actively within the funding sources that we choose and selecting who is put their name by our work. One thing that has helped a lot with this work is land acknowledgements. When institutions or organizations or meetings ask for land acknowledgements, they might reach out to one person, but they're touching that net. And that touch might go into a conversation of multiple people in a group chat deciding who's the best person to send to this particular event. I want to encourage people to continue doing land acknowledgements. And also partnerships, outside and inside institutions, and outside and inside intertribal organizations. We invite you to join us within this. We invite you to connect with other people and other Indigenous people, some of the faces that you saw today. We invite you to support and some of this work that's usually volunteer that's happening within communities. And we invite you to visit places. We invite you to visit some of these public places that have been here. I think if one thing comes out of this, go by the mound. Just go walk, cry at the mound. You know you're gonna cry, just do it at the mound. Do it. So Yakuke, thank you so much. That's our presentation. Thanks. Next, we're gonna have a panel, or I think, oh, actually, you guys are gonna do slides, right? Or do you have slides? Do you guys wanna talk about stuff, or do you wanna sit? Or? I think we should talk. Yeah. You wanna just talk? Okay. All right. We practice a lot, can you tell? This is all new. Yeah, please, yes.
Do you want to talk for like 5 minutes? Do 5 minutes each?
Okay. We'll do 5 minutes each. Okay. Sweet. Great. I'll give you this. Okay.
Hi, everyone. Hi, I'm Monique Verdin. Thank you, Haley, so much for the timeline and the perspective. I'm so grateful. This is Haley's bibliography. No, I'm just kidding. So the Nani Bobuncha, I've had the honor to be part of the build team. And I did not have on my wish list that I wanted to build an Indigenous earthen mound. And that is how life turns out sometimes. But I knew friends who did, specifically Dr. Tammy Greer. And Dr. Greer and I started working together in the woods, harvesting palmetto and willow to build these structures that are indigenous and traditional, using black willow and palmetto. And so we started doing that in St. Bernard Parish in 2015. And then the medicine wheel garden that she planted up in University of Southern Mississippi's grounds, she started bringing plants down to St. Bernard Parish. And so now we have a baby medicine wheel garden there. And really that work has led to the network of Indigenous gardeners that we're connected to, and then brought us to the Lafitte Greenway, which has a really layered history. The Nani's been teaching me a lot about the need to hold space for folks to be able to connect and to really lean into what Bulbuncha is and means, to really hold space for a place of many languages and a place of many tongues. And I also had no idea what I was saying yes to when I was like, okay, let's do this. But the Nani is like an antenna that keeps calling people. Every time we have a gathering there, there's people who show up, strangers and old friends and family, and in community, we were able to build this in a pretty short amount of time, / we did have some heavy machinery that was involved. But we are modern people living in modern times under the restrictions and constraints of contemporary art world as well. So non-traditional route to really, again, hold space and call people together and celebrate and watch the seasons and the times of change. So I'm so grateful to my collaborators and the community of folks that really turned out for us. I'm also part of the Bulbuncha Liberation Radio, which Haley mentioned, and came out of our relationship with the Indigenous Environmental Network. So I think, it's one thing for us to think about this hyper-local web, and then also how important it has been to have allies and relatives that are at the beginnings of the Mississippi River and in the global south and across the planet, really. And so we were able to celebrate solstice this year at the Nani, and you can tune in live on Tuesdays from 4 to 8 p.m., bulbuncharadio.net. We were just at UNO, University of New Orleans Library this morning with Peoples of the World, which is a cultural anthropology class. So yeah, tune in, and there's great, Jenna May is always dropping this like plant wisdom, and it's been really a journey that we keep going further down the wormhole of. The Nani, we realize, is great elevation, and we've gotten into antennas and thinking about alternative and autonomous communication systems. So I'm gonna rewind to a time that I don't remember, but I wanna say it was in the probably 2013 times. And I met Haley for a coffee, and I had just gone to this huge mound that's down in Dulac on Shrimpers Row. And there was a tropical storm that had come in, so it was rainy and that feeling. And I meet Haley, and I'm like, man, there's this mound, and there are these 100-year-old tree growing out of it. And Haley was like, yeah, we need to bury a server inside of it. So here we are now, and if anybody wants to join us, we're going to be having a solstice 1-year anniversary of our groundbreaking on December 21st at the Nani from 4 to 8 p.m. So please join us. And thank you, Haley, so much for all of the work that you've been doing, and for John and Scierra too. It's really inspiring. And Jeffrey and Virginia, it's, I think that similarly to Haley, I've felt often alone, and I am obviously not, because I have an incredible community that I've been able to learn from and build with and celebrate, yeah, that we are still here. So thanks.
Halito Hashimoyama. I'm Scierra LeGarde, and oh, louder, sorry, I get shy. So yes, thank you, Haley. It's a pleasure being here with all of you. I'm just gonna just talk a little bit about some of the dates that you mentioned that really stood out to me. 2016 was, like Haley mentioned, the DAPO protest, and in my experience, for me, that was almost an awakening, you know, that made me question, how can I best represent my indigeneity? You know, how can I better help my community and, you know, really bring awareness to that and, you know, bring us together. So I'm just gonna, I think, yeah, okay. So 2020 also really highlighted the importance of food sovereignty and food accessibility for everyone. And one way really to bring the community together is to establish gardens and really to establish accessible food sources. So one way we did that was the partnership with Tammy Greer. She started with the Medicineville Garden and working with Oklahoma Ikasholo. And all the groups were able to come together and help establish the Medicineville Garden in Bayou Lacombe. So that's at the top left. And then the Three Sisters Garden, which is at the top right. And Bochokwa, so everyone knows what Bobancha is, the land of many tongues. Bochokwa is the land of squeezing waters. And so that is the area north of Lake Pontchartrain, and it ranges from St. Tammany to Washington Parish, all around there. Those is all the tributaries and the bayous and the creeks. It was almost like, you know, waters being squeezed by the Creator. So that was our word for that area, Bochokwa. And so that name is just a testament of that history. And we really wanted to bring more representation. You know, a lot of times people think of Louisiana, they think of Cajun, they think of Creole, but a lot of times people really don't remember the Indigenous history and the people that are still here. So, so with that, we really wanted to bring back some of that history, like partnering with Tom Colvin and partnering with other groups around South Louisiana, you know, like the Tunica Biloxi, like members of the Houma came out, Virginia, she's part of the MOA band of Choctaw. Many people came out to help build this chuka, which is, we really wanted people to see, you know, some of the traditional housing that was here. So, and also bringing back some of our traditions like basket weaving and language revitalization. So, you know, just little projects like that, building back relations with other tribes. You know, for instance, the Mississippi Band of Choctaw, which not that long ago we had there was communication. So just welcoming people back and reestablishing those relations. So this was back in 2021. We invited everyone to come out for some social dancing, some stickball playing, and just it was just a really good time. So yeah, that's it.
Ome, halito. Ah, chokma. Halito. Can you tell I'm a language teacher? So my name is John DePriest. I'm a member of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, and I'm a linguist and a musician as well. And since Haley already talked a little bit about language this evening, I'm going to mostly be talking about music. But in relation to those things that she was saying already, I wanted to mention, I think relevant to that, part of my journey, which was starting at Tulane in 2010, and the first semester that I was at Tulane was right when the relationship between Tulane and the Tunica Biloxi Language and Culture Revitalization Program was starting. And what I was studying in linguistics was totally different from Indigenous language revitalization. It had to do with language and music in the brain, which is something I'm still interested in, but that connection really ignited something in me about pursuing and being able to revitalize and preserve my own tribe's language. And so after I finished my PhD, I was like, okay, good that that's out of the way. Now I'm going to do something totally different and start working with the Choctaw language and start trying to preserve it in ways that I can. And so, as Haley mentioned, I'll be offering the Choctaw language course for the first time. I tried offering it before, but there weren't enough students for the class to make, and so next semester in the spring, we'll be teaching the Choctaw language at Tulane for the first time, which is really exciting. Yeah, including to Choctaw students at Tulane and also members of the community who want to join. So that said, I'm going to tell you about some of my favorite bands, because what would I be as a musician without that? So in the last 20 years, in the 21st century, which is what we're talking about here, there's been a lot of revitalization of Indigenous music in the Gulf South and the broader kind of region. And I have a really kind of expansive view of the Gulf South, which includes Oklahoma, because so many tribal communities from down here were removed to Oklahoma. A lot of the cultural traditions of this area are being preserved in Oklahoma. So there's a lot of connection there, including the first person here, Presley Byington, who is a traditional flute maker, river cane flute maker from the Choctaw Nation, who is preserving this tradition, and has been for a long time. In the middle is Sharday Thomas Mallory, who is also preserving a long-standing tradition of the Mississippi Hill Country fife and drum flute making tradition that she learned from her grandfather, Otha Turner. I have also started making these kinds of flutes, both kinds of flutes, actually, with my colleague and collaborator, Jeffrey Derensberg, who was mentioned earlier. So we also have started making flutes to explore this kind of tradition and the indigenous influences of this kind of music. Also, Charlie Matotoyela, who plays river cane and wood flutes and has an excellent social media presence. And his flutes sound great with reverb on them. He's a master flute maker who's a Alabama Cherokee in Anigunwia band. I also want to talk about Choctaw social dance because this is another area where music and dance traditions are revitalizing in the Gulf South area, particularly in Mississippi. And here's Mr. Ralph Isaac with the Mystic Wind social dance group. And they travel around and perform social dances and include a lot of other people, including at Bayou Lacombe. Scierra had a picture of them just a few slides ago. And then I wanted to include this as well because this is Michael Billy at the Choctaw Fair just this year, this past summer. And he was leading his social dance group with a bunch of relatives and community members to revitalize the Fucket Hiptha, which is the turkey dance in Mississippi Choctaw. And this was the first time that this dance was performed in public at the fair in anyone's living memory. So there's a lot going on there too. And I want to mention powwow drum as well. Okay, I'll be quick. Because these first three slides that I've talked about, flutes, social dancing, and powwow drumming, are often identified, especially for outsiders looking at indigenous music. These are usually the first things that people think of, flutes and social dancing and drums. But I wanted to mention Kirk McMillan and the Southern Pine Drum Group, because they are innovating powwow drum style and making it much more of a Choctaw influenced kind of tradition, rather than just being kind of more of a plains tradition that it kind of historically has been. And that's a picture of Kirk McMillan when he came to visit my class last year, and Scierra too. All right, and I also want to mention Zydeco, because many Zydeco musicians are Indigenous and have Indigenous ancestry and are actively pursuing this and supporting it and preserving it and expanding its usage and innovating in this style, including Cedric Watson, who is, since we're talking about the last 20 years, Cedric Watson is an up-and-coming musician who's pretty well established now in the Zydeco world, who's someone who's proud of his Indigenous ancestry. And a lot of the Zydeco style comes from Ishak traditional music styles as well. And of course, funk and jazz. So here's Greyhawk Perkins performing with the Mescal Jazz Unit at the Jazz Museum downtown. This was one of his albums that came out a few years ago. To my knowledge, this is one of the only albums, if not the only, that is currently out that is in the Mobilian language. So it's excellent too. It's very experimental, it's great. And of course, Samantha Crane, who's an Oklahoma musician, who is an indie rock star whose music has been featured in a number of films, TV shows, etc. And she often sings in the Choctaw language. She's a member of the Choctaw Nation. So yeah, it's not just local, it's not just traditional music. It can also be very experimental, including a local musician and poet Tanner Menard, who came out with this spoken word album just earlier this year called The Poet, which is very experimental. So it's not just preserving traditions, it's building on them and creating new things and innovating within this whole landscape. So I hope y'all check out some of this music, because it's really good.
I hope that's a bit of hope for today, in today's moment. I think next we're going to be open for questions or just a discussion. These were the panel questions that please come take a seat. Yeah, sorry. These are the panel, we're going to talk until Chris and the LEH team kick us out, so they'll let us know about that. These were the questions that I sent the group chat in a text message before this event. So you guys can ask these questions, or if there's other things that you want to talk to us about, or just, we can have this as an open discussion. So. Another great thing about Indigenous communication is that there's a lot of quiet. So we'll wait you guys out. Yes.
Sure. So what she was asking was about why people went to Oklahoma and what the connections are, a little bit more about the connections between this area and Oklahoma. So removal is the one-word answer for why Native communities from the Gulf South are in Oklahoma today. Andrew Jackson and the removal process in the 1830s forced Indigenous people to move from their homelands to Oklahoma in exchange for the reservation lands there. There's been a lot of cultural loss in Oklahoma, actually. And there's been a lot preserved, and there's been a lot of innovation there as well. But for my particular tribal nation, the Choctaw Nation, there were a lot of new traditions that were started in Oklahoma, and there were a lot of traditions that were lost, including a lot of the social dancing and stickball. So starting in the 70s, like the 60s, 70s, 80s, a lot of members of the Choctaw Nation actually went back to Mississippi to relearn a lot of these traditions, including social dance, relearn about stickball, and other things in order to keep these traditions alive in Oklahoma and kind of revitalize them. So this was something that's been going on for a while, and now kids are coming up in Oklahoma with stickball sticks in their hands, and they know about the social dances. Like my kids know about the social dances. They know to run when the stealing partners dance comes around. Just, so they don't want to get dragged out into the dance. Yeah, so that's just a little bit, a very short.
Yeah, Chris has a question too.
Quick question. I noticed there's mics. Will this conversation be available somewhere later?
Yes. Do you want to?
Yeah, we're recording today and we'll rebroadcast on Bulbuncha Public Access as well as Bulbuncha Liberation Radio. So yeah, we will have it available, and we'll share the recording with the center as well. Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about cultural heritage work developing in the last 20 years, kind of like what was happening before that, or what were the things happening historically that seem to make this all come together in the last 20 years, where it may not have existed before?
I don't have a definite answer there, but I think that if we think about the civil rights movement, and we think about the American Indian movement, and we think about the 1970s, I mean, for the United Houma Nation, the 70s was a time when, people were organizing before, but the 70s, there was this real push to try to seek federal recognition and to, organize in a way that is now the United Houma Nation. So yeah, I think that fight for federal recognition is something personally that's a little like, do we want the United States to recognize us? Do we need them to do that? Like, what are they going to do? And then I think it's important to recognize that we were unrecognized in the late 90s. And when that happened, the Bureau of Indian Affairs came down the Bayou and recommended that members of the United Houma Nation break into smaller bands to trace a more direct bloodline. And when that happened, there were members who broke away. So present day, you have the Pointe-au-Champ Indian tribe, the Biloxi Chitimacha Confederation of Muskogee, and they have a couple of different bands that they've organized under Ile de Jean Charles, Montague, Bayou Lafourche, and so I think that in just from a Houma perspective, that kind of schism that happened has come also with a lot of recognition that in this time of us fighting to be recognized, we're not only losing our land at one of the fastest rates on the planet, but we're also losing so much more. And so I think that individuals, a couple of people came together with a concern. Haley and Colleen Billiot were doing this Houma language work early early on before they formally formed. So I think it's these like curiosities of individuals and feeling like we didn't have a place to go to, or for myself, it was like I spent so much of my early life trying to figure out like how we got here. And so when Elizabeth Ellis's book came out, The Great Power of Small Nations, I felt so like affirmed in things that I like felt but didn't have the evidence for, and also inspired by the stories that had been invisibilized, that are really important. And so yeah, I don't know, that's my perspective.
Yeah, I really do think that, this can be said for all indigenous peoples. Not only in Louisiana, but I really think like just across Indian country, that awareness that we've always known, that identity and who we are. But I think the crux of it is, with each community, it would happen at a different rate. I know for us, for the Bayou Lacombe community, as a member of an unrecognized community, the DAPL protests really put Native struggles in the limelight, which then made you ask questions. Okay, well, why are we having these struggles? What led to these struggles? Okay, so then you have to dig back into the historical narrative. Okay, well, this is because this is how we're marginalized. Well, why are we marginalized that way? So it's like one question leads to another, and you have to take a deep dive. And once, recognizing Louisiana history and the racial timelines that differ from the rest of the South, and we have our own, we have our own history of how we boxed in certain classes of people. For us, that really kind of made us awaken to that. And so I think that I kind of lost my train of thought. But yeah, I think 2016 really put that into the forefront. And I did lose my train of thought, I'm sorry. But yeah.
I think one thing I'd want to add to that is that, like, I'm not proposing that in 2004 we crawled out a cave and started building Nani Bobancha. Like, there were elders, there were people doing this work before us, but I'm not a historian, I'm an activist. This is what I do moving forward. I think that there's a lot of, rich history that we can, each of us, talk about who were the people who were stewarding this work a generation before us. I think I'd personally named 3 to 4 people in my network on those slides that were the older generation that were pulling us forward. And I think that for all of us, there are those names that are in the back of the mind that were doing this work forward. But we were hoping today to focus on the forward, but there is a research question, or there is some storytelling that needs to happen about who was holding this before.
I also wanted to say that, and this is to a certain extent obvious, but the internet and the ease of communication has had such a profound effect on being able to just connect people. Whereas before, people would be preserving traditions in isolation, or feel like, I have this knowledge, or I have this this traditional craft, or this ability that has been passed on to me, and they may not feel like they would have anyone to share it with or be able to pass it along to. And so having these connections and being able to learn from people who aren't just right next to you or in your immediate vicinity has been such a tremendous benefit for cultural preservation, and being able to communicate with people from across great distances who have different skills or different knowledge, and to be able to share that and build something has been really powerful.
That makes a lot of sense.
I know it's a huge field, but you are teaching now a language at Tulane, which is amazing. Can you tell us, because again it's a huge question, but about the languages that were spoken of the different tribes in nowadays Louisiana?
Sure. I'll tell you about the languages that are spoken. So the Choctaw language, which is the language that I'll be teaching and that Scierra and I have been learning and practicing for quite a number of years now, is spoken in Louisiana and Mississippi and Oklahoma. And there are Choctaw communities all over, including in Alabama and California, Washington State, through various federal processes. It is a living language, and it's a language where, kids learn it and they innovate and they make it different and they create slang, and it's different slang from previous generations, and in the same way that any living language is. And languages change, but also the Choctaw language has developed kind of differently in Oklahoma and Mississippi, largely because in Oklahoma it was written down and there was a high degree of literacy in the Choctaw language, starting from the 18 teens and 20s. So in the 1830s and 40s, there were hundreds of thousands of pages printed in the Choctaw language every year. So this is including, the Bible, other kinds of religious materials, legal documents, government documents, newspapers. So there's a long kind of literary record, but to a certain extent, that means that the language kind of fossilized in this one way. And it's like, okay, we have formal Choctaw, and this is how we speak it, and this is how it is. Whereas in Mississippi, it was much more spoken, and so it was much more fluid, and it would change, and it would live, and like I mentioned before, with more slang being developed and abbreviations and other ways of saying things, and that's still changing, and that's the beautiful thing about living languages, is that they change and they grow and they adapt to the new surroundings and the new kind of initiatives and efforts that people put into them. But this is one of the most linguistically diverse places in North America. There were dozens of languages that were spoken here at the time of contact, from at least 5 different language families, in dozens of language isolates, so languages not related to others. And so people had to create a trade language in order to communicate across these language boundaries. So, that's why this place is called Bobancha, the place of other languages, is because so many different languages and so many different groups of people and cultural traditions would come together here and still do.
I think if you want like a permanent marker, like just like a big highlighter, like washable marker version of what John is saying too, is you have the Muskogean language family that is mostly, most of the languages in this area in the Gulf, or within our area of Louisiana, are based on a Muskogean language. If you think of Muskogean like a Latin, where you have all of these other languages that are taking a root from that, Muskogee and Latin are kind of in the same, so within the Muskogee language family, you have Muskogean, you have Creek, which are kind of out there. You also have Coasati, or what's Coshada, it comes from Coasati, Chitimacha, and Choctaw. And so those are all in the same language family. And you have 2 language isolates in the area, or 3 language isolates in the area, essentially, Eshak, Tunica, and Tunica, Biloxi, and Chitimacha. You have anything to add? Look, I see your eyes there. You got anything to add?
Biloxi's a sewage.
Okay, sorry. Oh, sorry, what? Yeah. I thought Alibamu is part of Coasati. No? Okay. They're very similar. Okay. Virginia and Jeffrey, everyone. Pull up a chair if you want. Come on down. Yeah.
I have another question, unrelated to language, or maybe not. Gardening. How can we know how to? Some of the plants have disappeared. Are we losing them? And how can we do a garden, a medicinal garden?
I'll let you take that one first.
Well, I mean, I think that one thing that I've been learning is that we've been told that medicine is a weed, and it's all around us. It's growing out of the sidewalks. It's in our front yards. Also, I think that something that's really important for us to think about is the fact that our coastal forests are disappearing and how important those places are for our traditional practices, for harvesting palmetto, for using willow, for being able to feed ourselves as well. And so as our land is disappearing, also what's happening is that you have a lot of development and clear cutting of coastal forests that is continuing in these times, which seems really little out there. But you can see a really beautiful medicine wheel garden at the University of Southern Mississippi, which is stewarded by Dr. Tammy Greer, and it's been growing since 2005. So it's like a baby forest in the middle of the campus, and is a site of learning and also of meditation. A lot of the young students have been, have found a sense of peace in that garden often. At the Los Isleños Cultural Complex, which is in St. Bernard Parish, we have a tiny medicine wheel garden that we're stewarding. There is a Indigenous Arts Festival that's happening at the Los Isleños Complex this weekend on Saturday and Sunday from 11 to 5, I want to say, is when it's happening. And our network of Indigenous gardeners, the Oklahina Ikisholo, we have a website. It's really simple, ohih.net. And there's a number of gardeners and garden sites, and we're often doing public events and sharings and offerings. I think that network has been growing since 2020 during COVID. It too has been teaching me a lot about, reactivating old and new tradeways and thinking about land and sites that are separate from each other but are interconnected. And I think I just want to say that we, as Indigenous folks, we talk about sovereignty, or this word sovereignty is often used. And even for my own work, like I've been saying food sovereignty for a long time. And recently, Konya Chafa, who's a DJ and engineer for Bobuncha Liberation Radio, he was like, Monique, we don't want sovereignty. Sovereignty, sovereign. Let's break down the word, sovereign. The sovereign system, that's not working. So I was like, yeah, we want autonomy. That's right. And then somebody just recently, I'm part of a network, the Mississippi River Open School, which is, you can find that network online too. It's just MississippiRiver.school. And I was with some of my collaborators in Memphis just recently, and someone brought up this idea of autonomy and how we talk about the rights of nature, how we're personifying a river or giving rights, or corporations, right? They also have autonomy, and autonomy is kind of a false idea. We can't have autonomy. We are interconnected, and what we really need to focus on is vital relationships and recognizing that. And so I think that, the plants have been teaching me that in a really big way. And I think, we're leaning into knowing that we need each other, and we need to recognize our relationship with the world around us, and that we're not in control of it, and we were not put here to dominate and destroy, but to grow and to heal, hopefully. So,
yeah, one thing that I can testify to is building those relationships and working with members of Oklahina Ikisholo, And, in seeing, you're doing the groundwork, you're building relationships, not just with each other, but with these plants, and, reestablishing, how we use them and how they help us. And so for me, it's a very rewarding experience. Go out there and talk to people, go to places like Monique mentioned. Go to different events with our fellow gardeners, and really change your mind on how we approach plants. Like you said, a lot of medicine was thought of as weeds, and rechanging your mindset. A lot of these help us, and so just going out talking, being in areas where there's seed sharing and really learning from one another is a way that I think you can implement that in your own life. So.
And to kind of bring it back into, like, where does this knowledge come from? Dulac, if we think about, like, where, like, a lot of the indigenous botany that we have preserved is coming from the school teacher Wilhelmina Hooper, who was a Methodist school teacher based in Dulac, working at the Indian Day School. And part of her work, she was in correspondence with anthropologist Frank Speck. And Frank Speck was a linguist and an anthropologist. And he asked Wilhelmina to get some of this information about plants. And so Wilhelmina, as part of her work as a teacher, knew everyone and started asking and started documenting this information. And then you can see Wilhelmina bring this and have letters that have been sent to Dr. Frank Speck with all of this information that she has handwritten about this, indigenous botanist knowledge. And then you can see Frank Speck publishing the paper under his name called List of Houma Curatives. The word Houma got in there, which is really great, but I just want to say Wilhelmina Hooper's name in that too, of just like how these things have become laundered over the years.
Yeah, Wilhelmina Hooper. I'm a huge fan now, thanks to Haley turning me on to this amazing collection, which is at the American Philosophical Society. And I just, as you were sharing that, I was thinking about how, for my grandmother, and it was organizing to get educated. Like, that's why they were really pushing for federal recognition and for lost land, stolen land rights that they knew. They had been swindled in oil and gas and land loss going back to the times of colonization. But I think that in these times that we're in right now, where education here in the state is always underfunded and devalued, and there is actively right now divestment that's happening in our public institutions, from Head Start to higher ed. I think that in thinking about why the last 20 years, in addition to this world wide web of the internet, it's also been that there's been a generation of people who not only graduated from high school, which my father's generation was the first generation to graduate from high school, but also to have other education, not just college, but other experience and pathways and opportunities. And so, I think that education is really important for our young people, and the work that the Pointe École is doing is really inspiring. And, I think that how do we create more opportunity for intergenerational learning and sharing and growing is really important right now as we move forward.
Okay, this is going to be the last question, and then we're going to have to head out, but yes.
This is a quick and it's a personal question. Are you related to Christine Verdin in Pointe?
I think we get this all the time. Yeah. I'm not sure how, but yes. Yeah. No, she's brilliant. Yeah, our people are from Pointe-aux-Chenes. So my grandparents migrated to St. Bernard in the 40s, and I'm not sure where we meet on the tree, but as my grandmother would say, we all come from the root of the same oak tree.
There's a net that connects. Do you guys have any last or final comments before we close it for today? Okay. Well, Yakuke, thank you guys so much for having this. Yeah.